If you would all rise and join me, please. I pledge allegiance. Thank you. This joint town meeting is a big crowd, so hopefully everybody will keep the side discussions to a minimum so that everybody can hear what's going on. You'll be able to hear me because I've got the mic, but hopefully we can hear comments. I'm going to run through the ground rules of the meeting to start out. Number one, please turn your cell phones off. We don't need to know if your laundry is ready. The rules of the meeting are going to be under the Mass Moderator's town meeting times. I've got a copy here, and it's pretty straightforward, but if there's a question on procedure, we'll refer to town meeting times. A couple of things, because it's a large group, now as I understand it, we haven't had to use the overflow room, which is really a blessing because it will make things much easier and much quicker. But because of the large group, I hope everybody will be courteous and respectful. If you want to speak, please line up at one of the 4 microphones. There's one down here, there's one over there, and there's 2 at the back at the top of each aisle. If you're physically unable to get to a microphone, please just raise your hand and we have a portable microphone which we will bring to you at your seat. Again, because there's a lot of us, please keep your remarks brief and to the point, and we don't need to hear the same point over and over and over again, so if you had something to say and you heard somebody else say it, I think we don't need to hear it again. All questions and comments come through me, and I'll try and direct them to the appropriate person, so there's really no back and forth between people in the audience. Your questions come to me, I'll pass them along, the answer will come to me. If you have a follow-up question, please ask. Again, because there's a lot of us, before people get a chance for a second comment or question, I want to make sure everybody who hasn't made a comment or a question gets a chance to go. So if you have a second question to ask, please hold until people who haven't said anything have had a chance to get to a microphone. Amendments or substitute motions have to be in writing. Doesn't have to be fancy. I've got some paper and a pen here. You can make it verbally, and then we'll take a quick break, and you can put your amendment or substitute motion in writing. There's no difference between an amendment and a substitute motion. They're treated the same way. You make an amendment or substitute motion, we deal with that, and then we go back to the main motion on the floor. Voting will be via a show of hands. If I'm uncertain of the outcome, then I have tellers appointed already and sworn in, and the tellers will count the raised hands. If the meeting wants to fix a method of voting other than a show of hands, it can be done by a motion and a second and a majority vote of the people here. I'm not going to that we're going to do a paper ballot on my own, because if I do that, some people think a paper ballot favors one side or the other, and if I make the decision, then I get accused of favoring the side who wants the paper ballot. So we'll leave it to the group. If you want to have a paper ballot, we can have that vote. The other thing, this is special. I've never done a joint town meeting, and I don't know if anybody here has been to a joint town meeting. Maybe a couple of the attorneys have. And by the way, we have at least 3 attorneys present, and I've got them all sitting close together. I think that's probably safest for the meeting. And so just a comment about the joint town meeting and how it's different from a regular individual town meeting. First thing, obvious, we have just one article, which I think the last town meeting I did a few years ago, there were 60, so already we're in good shape because we only have one. The meeting can approve the motion made to the one article. They can vote it down, or they can amend it. The joint town meeting is not meant to dissect and review line items in the regional school budget. That's not the point of this meeting. There have already been separate town meetings in both towns where the budget has been reviewed and dissected and voted on. That's how we all got here, that we're here today. So it's not the purpose of this meeting to dissect the school budget. Similarly, it's not the function of this meeting if one of the towns needs to find more money to cover what is approved at this town meeting. It's not the purpose of this joint meeting to figure out where that money is going to come from. That has to go back to the town at a regular or a special town meeting to deal with their budget issues. So I'm going to try and keep us on target. We're talking about the certified budget amount, and we can vote yes or no or an amendment, but we don't really need to rehash what I understand has been rehashed several times, particularly in Templeton, about the nitty-gritty details of the budget. It's not the purpose of this meeting. Are we clear? Thank you. Lastly, just so there's no confusion, I'm not sure how Phillipston operates on a motion to move the question, and it often is a motion that people who aren't familiar think there's some hanky-panky going on and somebody's trying to twist the meeting to their advantage. It's pretty simple. I'll just cover it quickly. If you want to end debate, you make a motion to move the question. Motion has to be seconded. It's not debatable, and it takes a 2/3 vote to move the question. You can't interrupt the speaker. If somebody's talking and you decide, I'm fed up with this, I want to move the question, you can't jump up and yell, I move the question. You got to wait until you're called on by me. And the other thing is, if you're making an impassioned plea either one way or the other about the motion on the floor, you can't conclude your remarks by saying, I move the question. That's not fair. You have to be recognized by me for the purpose of moving the question. Probably what I just said, most of you already know, and I apologize for covering it, but it's something that, in my experience, has led to some confusion in the past, so I thought I'd just double check on that. Having said that, before we go any further, I would like to ask you all to join me in a moment of silence for Charlie Perkins. Charlie was a member of the Templeton Advisory Committee, and Charlie passed away today. And if you would all rise and give us a moment of silence, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, this is where the moderator turns to the school committee and says Article 1.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the towns of Phillipston and Templeton vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or otherwise provide $6,661,409 to pay local assessments for the Narragansett Regional School District's FY14 budget.
Is there a second?
Second. This is the certified March amount that the school committee appropriated for the FY14. This is their certified number.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Go ahead.
I move that the towns of Phillipston and Templeton vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or otherwise provide $6,520,780 to pay local assessments for the Narragansett Regional School District FY14 budget.
Is there a second?
The reason for this change is at the end of July, we received our final numbers from the state. They were up, and we'd like to lower our original amount because of that.
The superintendent would like to make some comments before we get started with the general comments.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I just want to make what just happened clear for all of you. The FY14 certified budget, and you see the sheet here in front of you that you picked up on your way in. The school committee needed to put the budget they certified on the article. The motion that they made in July of this year, the joint committee of the state finally came down with the dollar amounts and the budget that we would need to live with. In that budget, some minimum contributions to your towns went up, some minimum contributions went down, and in addition to that, we, as a district, had increased in our charter school revenues, in our school choice revenues, and in our regional transportation revenues. The school committee wanted to use those funds, which the charter school, school choice, and transportation, we aren't necessarily obligated to give all of that money to you, but they wanted to use that money to reduce the assessments to both towns. Both towns are in a better financial position with the amended motion. If you vote yes to the amended motion, and if you pay close attention to your school committee and how they vote, then we will be able to move forward with all the programs and services that we have done in the past. If it's a no vote, or if it's a reduced dollar amount, then we will need to make cuts because we will still be living on the 1/12 budget until the school committee reconvenes. So I just want to make sure that it was clear to you that this final amendment was really in an effort to help both towns reduce the assessment amount that they would need to put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Two of the Phillipston selectmen are up here on the stage. I would ask them if either one of them want to make a comment.
David Bramhall, selectman in the town of Phillipston. Most of my adult life has been centered on public education, and I know that the bedrock upon which this country sits is an educated citizenry. Jefferson once said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was or ever will be. And therefore, I urge my fellow townspeople to support the request of the school committee.
Thank you. Thank you. The Templeton Board of Selectmen chose not to sit up here, but I think they're out in the audience here somewhere. Would any of them like to make a comment? If so, raise your hand. If not, hold your peace. Okay. I'll then turn to the Phillipston Finance Committee. Does anybody on the Finance Committee have any comments to make? Thank you. And Templeton Finance Committee. Advisory Board, sorry, I'm using the wrong term.
It's the same moderator, both. Just to take and end up doing a quick review, the Templeton Advisory Board has reviewed the Narragansett Regional School District FY14 budget on 3 different occasions. The last one being on August 15th, where we met with the school superintendent. We also used the information from the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as part of our analysis in making our recommendation. Before giving our recommendation, I'd like to share some things that we found interesting when we met with the superintendent. The enrollment since 2006 within the district has decreased. The latest figures from 2012, the student population was 1,466. In 2013, that dropped to 1,426, and this is off the Department of Education's website. That's 40 students less. And the state is projecting a continued decline trend through 2019. The superintendent at that meeting also indicated that there's an anticipated surplus from FY13 of somewhere between 100 and 150,000. Our analysis of the town reports from 2000 to 2012 for Templeton showed the administrative costs average an increase of 6.46% versus an overall budget increase of 4.19%. You can look in your annual town report. It's all there. We did the analysis. The State Department of Education showed the administrative cost per pupil for the school district to be significantly higher than state average. That equates to an overall increase of cost as far as how much more, if we were to take and lower that to the state average, of having $121,678,000 more in the administrative costs.
You're getting close to pushing my button about dissecting the budget.
Okay. And looking at the line items for FY14,
What did I say about line items?
I'm only going to take and end up talking about our overall comment. We found that the numbers could be cut without effectively...
Wait, I'm sorry, we're not talking about the line item cuts in the budget. That's not germane
All right,
to the
I'm sorry.
meeting. I don't know how much clearer I can be.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, looking at the Department of Education sheet that you have as you walked in, please notice on line 10, under efforts goal, that number is what some people say is the minimum contribution. If you look at line 24, that's a required contribution. The assessment from Templeton is significantly higher than that. Based upon this and other things that the Templeton Advisory Board looked at, the Templeton Advisory Board recommends for Templeton a no vote on this budget.
I'll now open it up to comments or questions from the floor, and remember, you need to approach the microphone if you got something to say. What?
I would just like to address the enrollment figures that Mr. Spring mentioned. In 2005, we did employ 120 teachers, and because enrollment has decreased, this year, 2014, we are employing 101.
From the floor. Go to the mic. Please identify yourself and where you live. And turn it on.
Hello, my name is Sharon Manty, 16 Manty Court. My question is this a legal town meeting? Because you have one town that can determine the budget of another town. In other words, Phillipston could determine the fact that we would have to cut into our highway and our public safety. And that's crazy. I think this almost seems illegal
The
to
answer
me.
is yes.
This is legal.
Yes.
I think it's absolutely crazy.
Well, it may be, I don't know, that's for everybody to decide on their own, but it is legal, it is the process that was established for regional school districts. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Liz Toth, Gray Road, Templeton. I just want a clarification on the proposed budget change that is definitely going to fund the school to the extent that it needs to be funded for this year. Is that correct?
It will definitely fund the school programs that we've had in the past. I'm not saying it's not going to be tight, but we will be able to fund the program. So any of the cuts or anticipations that you've heard of, those would not have to take place.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Beverly Bartolomeo, South Road, Templeton, Mass. I've been a lifelong resident of this town and plan to go out in a box. I'm trying to understand why, when I read about the cuts that the school department has to make, that they're making cuts to things that the children need, the things that children use, late buses, sports. My question is, why are you cutting areas that will affect the children if this is supposed to be for the children, but you have a budget for 10 secretaries at $437,000? There are other places to cut. Thank you.
You're close to pushing my button.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, can we pass the portable mic down the table? Turn it on.
I just want to say something from the Phillipston side. We many years have squandered over the budget too, but in the past, our town, 3 different years I can think of in the last 10, our employees have taken a 0 raise so we could give the money we needed to the school. We consider education a priority. The sports, the plays, all the after-school events keep children from getting into trouble and actually end up costing your town more because you don't have behaviorals. We know that the school is expensive, but we are willing to consider it a priority in our town. Our senior housing 2 years ago got voted down. And the very next time there was something to be voted for the Phillipston Memorial School, our seniors stood up and voted yes.
Mr. Moderator, hold the applause, please.
I don't think there is anything more important than supporting your school in the way it needs to be. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator. I hear, right there. Yes, sir.
I'm Tom Jelinowski, South Main Street. If I could respectfully request, Mr. Moderator, that you ask the audience to hold the applause. I think it tends to be disruptive and affects what people might be thinking or wanting to say down the road.
I can ask.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
And it does delay things a bit. I know that, people want to express their support or not. If you got to do it, keep it brief so we can move ahead.
Mr. Moderator? Yep.
Where's that voice coming
Back
from?
here.
Oh, way in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, David, yes, sir.
How are you, Mr. Moderator?
I'm just fine, thank you.
Okay. I want you people to understand that we are not anti-education by any stretch of the imagination. I also want you to understand that last year, the town of Templeton's municipal government took a 15% reduction in all services. We went down to 4 days a week. We've reduced everybody. There are no elected officials that get paid. There is nobody that gets anything. If we were to approve this budget tonight, okay, then we are going to sustain another 25% cut in our regional budget, in our municipal town government budget, and I think that's asking an awful lot. I understand that back in the 1990s, as I recollect, there were some people in our schools who decided not to take their raises to try and help us out when we had a financial burden. I don't see any of that coming forth. I don't see the school committee offering part of their $350,000 E&D to lower the assessment to the community coming through. I think it's time that we all start trying to work together to support education. I have had 2 children educated, and I have 4 grandchildren as of this year who have gone through the school system, and I am not anti-education, but I also want to see the town government be able to operate, you know, with some good sense and something behind it left to it, other than no police, no fire, no highway, or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you.
All children have abilities, some are more apparent than others, but they all have abilities and gifts. Some of those gifts can never be realized without further education and other things like sports. My political ignorance comes out now. Be very loud if I do that, but okay. At any rate, yeah, political ignorance. What I do know is that undiscovered gifts create idle time, unused time is idle time, and people tend to find things to do at those times, especially children. And some of them end down a road that they don't want to be down, and you will end up paying for them one way or another. Whether it's in the form of rehabilitation, psychiatry, doctors, psychology, whatever you want to call it, in prison, stuff like that. One way or another, you're going to pay for them. So why not have happy kids that do sports? And for some kids, sports is a way to further their education, and some of them even find a way to get it paid for through it. Kids that play sports not only have less idle time to find things that they shouldn't be doing, they have more time interacting with the people in here and your children. And the more they get to interact with the rest of the world, the more apt they are to get along with it when they're older, and they can make decisions for themselves. So somewhere down along the line, you're going to end up paying for it one way or another. So rather than have it be the pay for the percentage that goes down the wrong road, we might as well all send them in the right direction the best way that we can until they're 18 when we can't control them anymore.
Thank you. All right, hold the applause, hold the applause. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion on the floor that we vote on the substitute motion tonight using the paper ballot.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to determine the method for vote on the substitute motion. I said, that's just a simple majority, and it is debatable. Motion's been made and seconded for a paper ballot. Any comments or questions on the procedural motion on the floor? That's a good question, and I should get, I took it as one motion to determine the type of ballot that we wanted, right? I heard him make a motion to determine the method in which we will vote, and that's he's suggesting we use a paper ballot on the amended, on the substitute motion. That's the motion on the floor that I've heard and is seconded. Yes, sir.
Moderator. Paul Quattrochi, 2 Military Drive. Yeah, I know, I still live there. Before we vote on that motion, I'd like you to explain to the audience what it entails, what procedure will be done, and how this auditorium will have to be cleared. And everybody would have to be checked in again, if I'm correct.
No. I think because we passed out, did everybody get a little piece of paper to vote on? Those only went to registered voters. So what we will have to do is we'll take a break to give the clerks a chance to set up the ballot boxes, and then I will orchestrate casting votes into the ballot boxes. I'll say, everybody in the first 2 rows, go cast your ballot. And that's the way we'll do it.
Bob, I believe you, but I'd like a lawyer to give us a reading on that.
We have 3. Do you
I
want
know.
3 opinions?
Well, at least 2 out of 3.
Let's see if we can get 2 out of 3.
The moderator is correct. Absolutely.
That's 1 for me.
The procedural rules allow the moderator to set the rules of the town meeting, including the rules relating to the voting, and therefore he is correct.
That's not to say, as I think one of Paul's points is, that whether you have to all file out and file back in again, or whether you're going to do it the way I have explained you're going to do it, it is a time-consuming process one way or the other. And then, after the ballots are all cast, then we have to count them, which will be, we will take a break and everybody can go outside where it's 10 degrees cooler, or perhaps we all have to stay in here, because if you go outside, we have to check back in again. Yeah, that's where they're checking back in again. So if you want to stay in here and sweat while the votes are being counted, you don't have to check back in again. If you go outside, you'll have to check with the folks out front again to get back in again. And I suppose, because there could be a second paper ballot while the votes are being counted, I think I will get everybody out of here and go get another paper ballot, so we'll be ready if you decide you want to go that route again. Any other comments or questions on the motion on the floor?
Sorry about that.
Yes, sir. I got 2 out of 3.
I was just going to make it unanimous, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. No. But we're determining the way we're going to vote on that. Well, that's the point. We're going to approve or disapprove the amendment. What we're voting on is how we vote. So we obviously have to determine the method of voting before we vote on the substitute motion. I'm not confused, am I? No. Excellent. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moderator, Sheila Kuchar, Dudley Road, Templeton. Couldn't we have a show of hands to vote on whether or not we want to use the paper ballot?
Yes, that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
We will have the vote on the motion on the floor will be by a show of hands. When we get everybody who's said what they want to say, having said it. Anybody else want to comment?
Mr. Moderator.
I hear yes. Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say, as painstaking as the paper ballot is, it takes away all the pressure from anyone, from voting their heart, from voting what they really want. Either way, they vote what is their conscience. And a lot of people have peer pressure, and I think it's worth the effort to do the paper ballot.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Keep it down, please.
Sharon Manti, 16 Manti Court. My question is, we're talking about paper ballot, but we're talking about just changing the 6.661409 to 6520780. Is that not correct? This is not voting on whether or not they get the money. This is changing the value. Is that not correct?
The first vote that we will take will be a show of hands to decide if we want to do a papered ballot or not.
For the change of the dollar value, right?
For the substitute motion.
Okay, just for the substitute motion, not for the entire...
That's the motion on the floor.
All right, thank you.
Anybody not seeing any other comments? Would all of those in favor of having a paper ballot signify by raising your hand? All those opposed? The noes, and just one hand, please. No tricks back there. The noes have it, so there's no paper ballot on the substitute motion. Now we're back to discussing the substitute motion. Yes, ma'am. You got something to say?
Yeah, Bobby French on Queen Lake, Williamsville Road in Phillipston. I'd just like some clarification on this whole other motion. I was trying to follow up the other person who was talking about the sports. I just need clarification because there are some people that I think are here just because they want to save sports. Myself, it was middle school sports in particular. However, I've heard that middle school sports are not being cut regardless of the vote tonight. And if that's accurate, I think people need to know that because sports players have already gotten calls that they are having sports, even if there is a no vote tonight. And I think some people are here, just like that gentleman said, to save sports for kids when I don't think that could be accurate no longer.
Yeah, I'll allow that because it should be a simple answer.
It's not a yes or no answer. There have been, the only people that can make cuts to the budget are the school committee. Because on a 1/12 budget, the school district would lose $350,000. As the superintendent of schools, I had to make recommendations for them to think about what cuts we will have to make if this budget doesn't go through tonight. The only people that can answer that, and they can't answer that tonight, are the school committee. I have to say, my recommendations of superintendent, the ones that I laid out, were cuts that would go across all things. It would be a little bit of sports, it would be a little bit of academics, it would be some teachers, it would be some buses. It was a balanced. What we were trying to do was save as many programs as possible. So I can't say, whoever said that definitely middle school sports would be in place was not speaking accurately. If somebody said it was definitely going to be cut, that wasn't speaking accurately either. Those are recommendations because of the dire need the district has for the money. But we will have to, if this goes down and the school committee needs to take the budget up again, we will have to look at $350,000 worth of cuts because we cannot operate below our budget. And the 1/12 budget is $350,000 less than the budget we are asking for.
Yes, go ahead.
The school committee has on the table a list of cuts that were presented by the superintendent. We asked the superintendent, in addition to those cuts, to bring us further cuts. Nothing has been cut, nothing has been taken off the table, and that includes middle school sports. There are many rumors. Middle school sports is on that table to be cut as a prospect if this budget does not pass.
This is why I wanted to keep away from dissecting the budget, because it can't be decided and there can't be guarantees and you can't have an ironclad answer. It depends on what comes out of this meeting for a number, And if it's anything other than the certified number, it goes back to the school committee to reconsider the budget.
Correct, I understand that, and I think that if football players weren't called, even today, to say that, yes, they're having football.
If you understand that, then you're not going to get the answer to the question you're asking because they haven't answered that question yet.
Correct, and I think that's why there's just confusion, so you don't know what's going to happen with a yes or a no vote.
You don't know, and that's why we can't get into the details because nobody knows. We know there's going to be some pain involved.
Right.
But we don't know where that pain is going to be. And I know you would like it because if you've got a son who plays football, you want to make sure that's protected. If you've got a daughter that plays field hockey, et cetera, et cetera. But we're just not going to get into that level of detail here because we can't give you the answer. I don't give answers anyway, but they can't give you the answer that you want.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Keith Eaton, 36 Ridgewood Lane, Templeton, Mass. I'm going to just try to address that last point. I happen to be in place to be a middle school football coach, okay? I can tell you right now that I did make calls today, but it was not to say whether there would be middle school football or not. Any good program has to be done in advantage. You know, in other words, instead of having this vote come or go, decisions being made, and then making phone calls on a Tuesday, Wednesday next week when the program's supposed to start on a Thursday would not be appropriate. I wouldn't want to get a phone call saying, oh yeah, your kid has to be here on Thursday. I did make phone calls today just as an advantage to say I did not know whether there'd be a program. If there is a program and we go forward, this could be the subject day that we would start.
Thank you.
If there's confusion, I do apologize because I did make calls, but I wanted to be a professional and just make sure that we had it in place. But I assure you this, any messages that were left today was just to say this is what would happen, not regardless of the vote. And that's exactly the quote. So if I caused any confusion, I want to apologize in advance.
You don't need to apologize. We all cause confusion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Moderator.
Where's that voice coming from?
Up in the back.
Way in the back. Yes, ma'am.
Susan Anderson, 15 Depot Road, in East Templeton. I was just wondering, if you can't give us the information that we require to make a proper vote, why are we here?
It's a legitimate question because people want to know the facts on which to vote, but the way the system is set up in a regional school district, we're following state law, and that's the way it works. That's the nature of the beast. It may be confusing, and somebody said it doesn't make any sense, and I'm not going to pass judgment on that, but the fact is, it's the nature of the beast, and it's the way it is, and you can't dissect a budget, you can't create a school budget so you know what's cut and what's not cut at this meeting. It's not the way the system works.
Okay, so I can't ask the question as to why they don't have the administration's 6-point raise coming up on the budget cuts, is what I heard. I'm just asking.
Well, they're going to make a decision if the certified number is approved tonight, and it's already been taken off the table, so that's not likely to happen. That would be the final budget, and the school budget that was approved earlier in the year would exist. But if any number is approved other than that number, or no number at all, it goes back to the school committee. The school committee decides what they want to do, and we could be here again until December. This keeps going round and round, and even if we come back again in November and try again, we're not going to be able to give you the specifics that you're looking for. It's just the nature of the beast. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
that's the way it works.
Because it's confusing and
I may not like it either, but, you know.
people get misinformation, and that's my concern. I have people telling me one thing,
Right.
and I have other people telling me another thing.
Yep. I was told clearly, and I wasn't here at the past town meeting, but there was a lot of confusion over what number was what, and fortunately, from my perspective, delving into those numbers is not germane to this town meeting. As much as you would like to know the answer, it's not going to be hammered out here.
Well, I think that, it shouldn't involve the kids. I think that the kids should have their sports. I believe in that. They need something after school, but we also need to run a town. And we can't run it without the highway, without the fire, and without the police, because I was on rescue a while ago, and
Quiet, please.
we had state police for a month. And I'll tell you what, waiting 20 minutes on scene of a car accident with somebody bleeding, waiting for them to say, oh, yeah, you just need to get a blood test at the hospital, is ridiculous, you know? And the highway department, you're not going to get your roads plowed on time. I mean, they have a hard time as it is. You're going to lose all those guys. So people need to come together as a whole. The school and the town need to come together and figure out what is best for the whole town, not just for the school, not just for the town. And that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Bonnie House, Blake Corner Road, Phillipston. Mr. Moderator, move the question.
I was up before.
Is there a second?
Point of order, I was standing here before her, thanks.
Oh, okay. If you were standing there first, I'll let him speak, and then we'll move the question. Go ahead.
Always for ladies first, but not in this.
Yeah, I hear you. Go. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Mr. Moderator, I'm David Smart from East Templeton, Mass., 14 South Main Street. The one thing I think everybody in Templeton can agree on at this point, after the votes we've taken, is Templeton's wallet is empty. I don't think there's too many people in this room that would agree with me that if we cut and cut and cut, we're in big trouble. I love the schools, but I love Templeton more than just the schools.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I believe I was up here also before she came down. And I would like to say something.
Was he up here? Okay. I told the football coach that we all make mistakes.
Right.
Go ahead.
I want to address what happened with the football coach, and I want to know if he had approval from anybody on the school board to make phone calls.
That's not germane.
It is germane.
No, it's not.
It's always easier to ask forgiveness than permission. And I don't want people asking forgiveness when they never ask permission.
It's not germane.
Very germane.
No, it's not relevant. So have I missed anybody else who is standing in line? I apologize to those that I missed. Now, there's been a motion made and seconded to move the question. Takes a 2/3 vote to move the question, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, I thought I knew that. All those in favor of moving the question signify by raising your hand. Gee, it could be unanimous. Put them down. Anybody against moving the question? We have one brave soul. That happened, and I've been delinquent, but it's about 8 o'clock that happened. Okay, so this is where we're at. The substitute motion is the lesser of the two amounts at $6,520,780. We'll vote simple majority on the substitute motion. If the substitute motion passes, we'll then vote on it again. Seems a little silly to vote on the same thing twice, but that's town meeting times rules. You treat a substitute motion the same way as you treat an amendment. All those in favor of the substitute motion, you got a point of order, or?
Yes, the article that's been handed out is 782, not 780. The note that you're reference to is the state final budget, but the article that was read shows 782. I just want to be consistent.
It's 6520780? $2. Hang on. Let's get the number right. Okay. The substitute motion is $6,520,780. That's the substitute motion on the floor. All those in favor of the substitute motion signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Now, we're back to the main motion, and the main motion, again, is the same number now that we've changed it to $6,520,780. We can have some more discussion if you want, because the substitute motion was what we moved the question on. Any comments on the motion on the floor? What about the paper ballot? We did. We voted it down. Yep. Yes, sir.
Dan Keeney, Memorial Street, Baldwinville. I have one comment, if I may, and then a question. The comment is, I've heard people talk about the need to provide funding for the children for after-school events and various issues, and I believe that very few among us who are opposed to voting this budget would disagree. In fact, there are many communities more wealthy than Templeton who are able to spend more money than Templeton can on their education, and that's a good thing. I think the issue at hand is Templeton is saying, based on the previous votes we've had at town meeting, we simply cannot afford to provide the level of funding that is needed. Having said that, looking at the summary sheet that was handed out, it says there's an increase in state aid, a decrease in E&D, and a small decrease in the town operating assessments to give us the same bottom line budget of $17,990,356, if I'm correct. My question is, where did the reduction in the E&D come from?
Okay, I'm not sophisticated enough that I definitely know what the question is, so maybe we could try a brief answer.
I have a great answer. E&D for FY14 was $41,000. That number didn't change between the certified budget and the state final. The reason that it went down, originally we were transferring $25,000 out of the reserve account for athletics. We didn't have $25,000 in there, and so we were able to transfer less money from the athletic account. It was 13,000 something. So the difference in that number is not a change in the excess and deficiency that was certified by the state.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Mike Bouthart, 36 Johnson Avenue, Templeton, Mass. At this point, if there's no further comments, I would like to make the motion that we vote on the...
Move the question.
Move the question, correct, with paper ballot.
Second.
Okay.
You got that in the wrong order.
Okay.
Now, I'll give you a chance to regroup because I don't want to get tied up in procedures. If you want a paper ballot, you need to make that motion first.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that we use paper ballot.
Okay, motion's been made to do a paper ballot on the main motion. Is there a second? Second. Knew there would be. We've discussed paper ballot last time, so I'm not sure there's anything more that we can say, so I will just go straight to a vote. All those in favor of using a paper ballot on the main motion signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? Overwhelmingly defeated at 8:05. Okay, now we're back to the motion on the floor.
Mr. Moderator, in the back.
In the back, yes, sir.
Mike Dixon, 465 Patriots Road. Just a point of order. Templeton has a bylaw which allows reconsideration of a vote. I don't know if Phillipston has that or not. As a combined town meeting, how is that going to be handled?
That's a very good question, and I asked myself that, and the way that I answered it, and we could consult with the attorneys perhaps, but this meeting is going to adjourn. We're about to take a vote, and that will end it, and we'll not only adjourn the meeting, we'll dissolve the meeting. Once the meeting's dissolved, there is no reconsideration. It's done. So if somebody wants to make a motion to reconsider a vote while the meeting is still open, I would consider that, because I think it's allowed and it's proper whether there's a bylaw or not. There's no common bylaw between Phillipston and Templeton, but my guess is it's not a real issue because we're about to vote, and if we vote, then we'll dissolve the meeting and it'll be done. Okay? We're back to the main motion again. We've decided it's not going to be a paper ballot, and you have something to say.